Yeah. Hey, brass facts here. In a video game like DayZ, Tarka, Last of Us, Stalker, and basically any of the modern survival shooters, you exist in a Thunderdome-esque world, where items critical to your survival are haphazardly strewn out. And while you have your objectives, your quests, or the overrunning rampant desire to troll people in Cherno, you'll still make great efforts to scavenge these items for the gain they provide, slowly upgrading your kit and stash along the way. The idea of living out of your bag, proactively scavenging and living off the land, so to speak, is an idyllic one, and why these games end up being so popular, it's a great gameplay loop. My issue and the premise of this video, however, is that this gameplay loop, while a ton of fun, offers a really sanitized version of what scavenging, proactive scavenging, looting is actually like, so much so that I consider it mostly niche, impractical, and something that the community plans around way too much. So, join me for another round of Brass Facts, gets a little bit drunk, and talks about preparedness game theory. Obviously, before we proceed, take all of this with a grain of salt. A, I'm doing this off of very rudimentary notes. B, that aforementioned Hefeweizen and the bourbon already in me. And really, I'm a fucking no one that has no experience with anything of really anything in this category. Granted, probably neither do you. I just want to offer a little pump the brakes moment here regarding the increasing trend of not just viewing scavenging as a thing that may happen, which is honestly fine, but as something that is actively or proactively planned for as something one will do in a collapse-esque scenario. And maybe today I'll be able to pull some of you off back from the ledge and the consequences that a scavenger-centric mindset it tends to have. This video is sponsored by Blue Alpha. We've teased them last video, but what exactly does Blue Alpha do? Blue Alpha, more or less, is a belt gear-centric company. Anything related to EDC belts, battle belts, duty belts, belts, you can get those belts on their site. Magazine carriers, buckles, glove lanyards, you name it, they got it. They also have a little fun custom shop tab where you can nab some wild, wacky, drippy variants of their product line if you want a little bit of pizzazz of your gear with a unique camo pattern. Well, I'm not a big battle belt guy. I've been using their battle belt for actually quite some time now, occasionally on competitions and other things like that. And I've been wearing their actual EDC belt for over a year now, even well before I was sponsored by them. So go ahead, check them out. Back to the video. So right out of the get-go, I think we need to just have an honest assessment where we admit to ourselves that scavenging rarely occurs to begin with. It's very often aggressively overstated how useful it is to begin for most scenarios as a sort of policy prescription. Obviously, in rule of law, if you get attacked by someone, don't go rifling through their pockets before the cops arrive. But even extrapolating this into much worse times, such as civil unrest, local or regional disruptions, looting is still an exceptionally poor idea. Even something on the scale of Katrina, where we've had loss of rule of law for a significant amount of time, I think you're being a little bit delusional if you're thinking you're donning on a plate carrier, nods, and your $50 SSE bag and going house to house Last of Us style is not going to remote in anything other than you either getting shot or ending up in federal prison. I make the statement very often that preparing allows you not to have to make stupid no-win decisions is very much on the nose here. It seems pretty self-explanatory, but the best way forward in these types of scenarios is to have the resources stored beforehand. Yeah, groundbreaking stuff, I know, but for some reason, most people agree with it here. That logic just goes out the window as soon as the event goes from, your Katrinas to a full-blown systemic failure that lasts about a year or more. But if you've successfully prepared enough supplies for 6 months, maybe even a year, it's actually not fundamentally all that much more difficult to add another 6 months to another year on top of that. Now, obviously, all plans rarely survive contact with the metaphorical enemy, and there is a hypothetical scenario where you just run out of supplies and you're forced into looting. But why resign and plan for that type of situation as basically your modus operandi instead of just having it as your last resort in your pocket? In scenarios where we observe opportunistic scavenging, it is fundamentally one of the highest risk, lowest rewards activities you can partake in with high failure rates. I think a lot of people, probably about 50% of you, are giving me the old squinty eyes. Brass facts, what the fuck are you talking about? Who is actually of this mindset? The amount of people that are overtly of this mindset is actually pretty small. But then you look at the general phrasing and verbiage of the community at large, and you do see concerning signs that seem to indicate that this is much more prevalent than many people probably give it credit for. Don't buy a boutique rifle because if shit hits the fan, you won't be able to sustain it with spare parts you find. Your caliber choice should be that you should be able to restock indefinitely, use 5.56 and 9mm. My gun needs to be able to shoot all kinds of different quality of ammos, because when I get extra ammo, I don't know if it's going to be Tula or nice 5.56. And that doesn't even get into the type of on-the-nose conversations that for some reason every bro group seems to have, guilty as charged. We're gonna go raid the local Walmart Supercenter with nods, play carriers, and more as soon as shit kicks off. Now, all of these, except maybe the Walmart plan, are perfectly fine and even smart in isolation. But I've never seen those that have smart, plentiful preps all that worried about finding spare parts for their guns because they already own the spare parts for these guns. They're not worried about running out of magazines and losing them or burning through them because they already bought more than enough on, a Black Friday sale. They don't need to pillage ammo for their rifle because they have enough to make a National Guard armory blush. You get the idea. That extra shift at work, that tiny bit of overtime, or just saving some money is enough to generate the funds to get those extra mags, bolts, or ammo, or whatever you might be worried about. And while we can't plan for anything, there is certainly an upper limit to what is likely to happen. For example, no one's going to burn through 100 mags, 10,000 rounds of ammo, and several barrels, even during the most Mad Maxian-esque apocalypse. Let's pivot and maybe talk about this from sort of a different perspective, the battlefield pickup perspective, resupply and field, whatever you want to call it. In Ukraine, looting after engagements is very common on both sides. And that's not just Ukraine. Most militaries teach some form of checking the bodies for, life, booby traps, and then for intelligence and oh my god, I'm gonna die. And then to check the bodies for intelligence and relative supplies afterwards. And hey, if you happen to build a watch collection in the process, so be it. And on the surface, for civilians, this tends to make a lot of sense. You just got in a fight, I'll assume a defensive one, or at least against someone that deserves it. You burnt through a lot of ammo. Your gear is likely pretty worn out due to the circumstances of being in a world where, you can actually shoot other people like this. And rolling up and pulling security, and then looting the bodies, seems like a no-brainer. You won, it's time to loot the bodies. But this post-battle looting seems to be based off of military thinking where you're occupying the enemy position by virtue of wanting to take that position in the first place, and you need to clear out stragglers, take POWs, confirm the status, whatever. For civilians or irregulars, this logic begins to break down. Heavily. You are under no such compunction to take territory as a prepared citizen, and in fact, and most of the time the logical and tactical sound choice is to get the fuck out of Dodge as soon as you are able and the enemy is remotely routed or defeated. Looting after a fight incurs massive risk by remaining in the danger zone, for others converging onto position, QRFs, and the simple reality that, very realistically, most of the time you don't even know if the enemy has been defeated in full. As a civilian, looting is also just not nearly as useful or sexy as most people make it out to be. Everyone talks about, getting, good equipment or intelligence, but the likelihood of you having the equivalent of a Captain Winters moment and finding the map to the entire German shore battery on D-Day it's nil. Similarly, the loot you're going to find it's not going to be good, right? Like most rifles in the United States are going to be garbage tier, unzeroed PSA AR-15s with party-packed ammunition of God knows what provenance, backwards sights, and maybe if you're lucky something other than an Amazon tier optic. A lot of people are understanding how much risk you incur by engaging in this activity, something you realistically are only going to do 2, 3, 4 times? How many firefights do you think you're actually going to win, dog? And how much gain you're actually going to be getting as a civilian? $400 worth? I don't know. Just work overtime like 2 times and you'll have that covered, even if you're, working minimum wage. Now, let's not get carried away. Are there hypothetical situations where looting will make sense? Yeah, absolutely. You look down and hombre that just tried to kick down your door because he watched one too many goon CQB videos and made that his whole preparedness plan, and he's got some, fucking nice dual tubes or thermers. Yeah, grab that shit. Maybe you had a really bad day and your group is now bingo on ammo after a particularly intense fight and you need more. Yeah, pillage some shit off some bodies, whatever. I don't really dabble in Civil War stuff, but if you find yourself engaged with a larger force, government or otherwise, you may want access to spicier weapon systems. Yeah, once again, go for it. Though, consider units that get overrun are probably going to get a hellfire to the face shortly thereafter, but whatever, Regardless, there are many circumstances where scavenging, looting, whatever, makes sense. That's not the point of this video. Never say never, be flexible. But what I am trying to say is recently, a lot of people are looking at proactive looting to solve a lot of the inherent problems that may occur as their kind of go-to plan, when really that seems to be the complete ass-backwards way of looking at things. Times are good right now. Solve the problems that you think you're going to have by solving them right now with preemptive action. Don't pigeonhole yourself into systems that require you to put yourselves into bad positions on repeat. And I think it's creating a hammer and nail situation where you get a little too deep in the sauce thinking like that, and you're going to start modifying your behaviors in a optimal way. Yeah, well, that's it. Super short, super off the cuff. Let me know if you like this style a little bit more. I'm reading basically 20 bullet points, and that's about it. And so it's a little less polished than usual, but every once in a while I think it's fun to kind of have one of these, and it kind of illustrates the fact that this isn't the hardcore thesis that I have set up here. Anyway, okay, shut the fuck up, Brassfax. See ya. This chair cannot handle this much weight.
Very hard to see in the darkness.
Yeah, never mind them.
Never say hi. It's atmospheric. Hey, darling. Hi, girlfriend. Hello.
Hello.
Give him a kiss. Good girl. Give him a snoof. Nice.